Hi, everybody. This is Mike. I have Conrad De La Torre with me. Hello, Conrad.
Hello, Mike. Hello, everyone.
Thank you for being here. Conrad has requested that we sit down today and we talk about prepping of the field, a little bit of the things that Conrad has seen go right, a few of the things that Conrad has seen go wrong in terms of delivering trees to a grower, and then what happens after that. So, Conrad, could you maybe dive into it a little bit for us?
Yes. I just want to share this because I have probably one of the greatest opportunities to learn from so many growers, from Russell to all the major players that I do business with. And I learn so much from everybody. And then, of course, I get to see the mistakes that people make. We're selling anywhere from, I don't know, quite a few acres every year, right? And so I get a chance to see it all. Very fortunate in that because I get to learn from a lot of people. One of the biggest problems that I have seen, of course, when we going to land prep, ripping is probably your first step, right? You're getting a lot of growers right now are getting their ground ready to start prepping for this fall planting. And if you have that luxury to wait and do it right now they're putting an irrigation system. They probably already ripped, leveled, getting all that done.
Today is June 10th.
June
right?
10th. So it's really nice that I just came from Bakersfield today and they're putting an irrigation system in on this block where they're going to plant.
Way ahead.
It looks beautiful.
Yeah, way ahead.
What a deal, right? And they'll have their hoses out and getting ready to plant. So you just know they're on the ball and that's really good to see. And then, of course, you have some other growers that will be pulling out orchards and trying to get the field in the same year, which is a task, really, because everything has to work just right?
So as you have kind of the both maybe thoughts and practices of how you prep a field, timeliness of doing it, what are some of the issues that you've been seeing as of late that you want to share?
Well, cost is everything, right? So a lot of people, have a tendency to just rip down the tree row, which, I don't agree with. I think if you're going to farm, you're going to farm the entire ground. You want to give the whole tree, the whole area to grow on, right? If you're farming that and you're on a 22 by 14, rip it all, rip it solid. Let the root system utilize all the ground because you're going to be irrigating all that, right?
How big do you think that root system is? Just as big as that tree is?
Absolutely.
Tall? That's how big that
root system is. If you look at that top, I was told that canopy is equivalent to the root system down the bottom.
So it's substantial.
Everything's equal, yes. Yeah. So with that being said, you get into ripping, very important. Get in there and do your leveling if you're going to do that. And just getting prep, irrigation, water is really important. And then, of course, soil amendments, which are really, really one of my biggest problems that I have. I love soil amendments. You can put on any kind of fertilizers, you can put on compost, you can put out manures, do whatever you're going to do, but don't put it on the berm. That's, if you're going to do that, put it in that area where you're going to put up your row, disc it 2 or 3 times, just incorporate it into the soil so you don't see it.
Okay, so maybe we could back up a little bit. So I haven't pulled the berm on my field. Everything's ripped, it's leveled, it's really time to now start pulling a berm.
Right.
Should I, and I want to put soil amendments out, should I go and basically broadcast that soil amendment across the entire piece, disc it all in, and then pull a berm? Or can I broadcast it and pull a berm? What's the actual step I should be doing?
Ideally, yes, put it on the whole field. But a lot of people, they take the cost of fertilizers and everything they're trying to apply. They usually try to incorporate it into that, say, 6-foot area where the tree's going to be planted. They'll strip it right in that tree row.
Right.
Then once they do that, then they lift the berm right on top of it.
So don't even disc over it. They'll just lift a berm on top.
Most of them do. Yeah, they'll lift right on top. I don't really like that at all. I think I've seen growers where, you get off to you plant the tree and it starts off really good. When it hits that barrier, it really burns trees back because you have too much concentration in that area. So what I like to see is if you're going to put it on there, go ahead. I've done it myself where you put in, 10, 15, 20 tons of compost, whatever you want to do. but disc it up so it doesn't show up in the berm. Especially when you bring the berm, you're kind of bringing all that together, and then you have a really high concentration.
Right.
And these baby trees don't really like that. It just, when all that starts breaking down and you put a root system in there, it cooks the roots. It's too hot. The feeder roots that start coming out to get the flow going will burn back. You have situations like that, and I've taken soil analysis in those areas to prove my point. You take a soil analysis from the middle of the row where there's no amendments added,
Right.
and everything is normal. Then you take a soil amendment from the area where your tree's having a hard time, and it's off the charts.
Right.
Your nitrates and your chlorides, and it's just too much concentration. You don't really need that. It's okay, but the biggest problem is we're trying to compensate or trying to kickstart the trees too quickly and trying to overdo our amendments in that area. And so we have to be careful with that. I don't think they need much. Once you get them started, then you can feed. The beauty about micros or drip irrigation, we can feed right to the system as whatever they need. You can talk at length about it, because if you have chips on the ground, well, you're going to have to apply more nitrogen. And of course, then they'll say, okay, I won't put it in the berm. I'll go ahead, and after I plant the trees, I'll just broadcast all my compost on top of the berm. And then they put it in this thick, very thick. And now you have that water, and the water's bringing in that in. That's not good either. It's just too much happening at one time. Those trees really don't need it.
So what would your recommendation then be? Other than broadcast it and then disc it in so I don't see it as you're pulling up a berm. Now, other than that, I want to put fertilizer on. I want to put compost on. Should I just be kind of spreading it along the bottom of the berm? What should we be doing?
You can put it on the berm, but don't get too carried away and overdoing it.
Yeah.
Because first of all, I'd like to see you get the tree started, get it established to about, say, a good foot of growth minimum. And then when you apply in there, now the tree has a circulation system now where it can uptake that and not cause any major problems. So, then you can put it on the berm, then it'll just automatically go down with your irrigation system. And eventually that compost will disappear in a year.
Yeah.
But there's no need to overdo it, because then you actually create a suffocation effect of too much, right? I've seen it this thick. I've been in this business long enough where I've seen growers, and I saw this last week on another planting, where they dump a big shovel worth of compost right on the trunk. And I tell them, don't do that, because you're going to cook the trees. Well, they think it's compost and nothing's going to happen, right? Trees were 14, 18 inches long.
Wow.
Okay. That was on Friday when I saw it. I called the grower, told him, you need to rake that out of the trunk. It doesn't need to be in the trunk. By the time on Monday they got in there, 40% of the trees were dead already. That's how hot that was, that it just cooked that trunk. And that you would think, okay, wait a minute, there's nothing happening here, but that is so warm. The trees can't, it's okay if you put it on there, but rake it around the tree and let it work itself in slowly. There's no need to pile it on the trunk. So I've seen a lot of that happen. So be very careful with amendments and how you apply them. Wait till the tree is old enough to do it, and then you can go ahead and start feeding it all you want.
Right.
You can go 888, 15, tree and vine, you can use UN32, but you got to be really careful and understand your fertilizers on how you apply them.
Take your time.
Take your time. Don't get in a hurry. Trees don't need much when they get started. Then you can kick them in the butt at that point and say, okay, time to go.
Show me what you got.
Yeah. But, coming from the nursery, they were well nourished. We do a pretty decent job of putting everything the tree needs to get it to midsummer. So you got plenty of there in the tree to do that.
Okay. Is there anything else that you want to comment on?
Watering, of course, most of the growers have their water system in place and all that, and that's all great. I do suggest that anybody that plants trees basically run the water long enough to mud the tree in once. Just mud it in. Where you can sit there and put your foot on it and it's just nothing but mud.
Yeah.
One time. And what that does, it takes all your air pockets out, really settles that ground into the ground on the roots and really seals it up nicely. And then after that, you can do your regular maintenance program. That's key. The other, if you're going to flood, I've seen the problem where growers will plant on a berm. Excuse me. Then they come in and furrow irrigate on both sides of the berm. Well, the tree is so high off the water that water never makes it to the tree. So as a grower, you feel good that the water you're watering, but it's really not
doing its job.
Not doing its job. So I've been there where the grower says, well, I'm watering. I say, yeah, okay, but you take a shovel right there next to the tree and the tree is bone dry. It's not getting any water because the water is just running on both sides of that berm. It will not sub in. So we got to understand what that does. And if you're going to flood, that berm needs to be lower. You need to be able to cut into the berm to get that water to go in. And other than that, I think everything else is good.
What about, today we're sitting at historically low prices, especially when you account for inflation. I think if you adjusted pricing for inflation today, it's probably the lowest it's ever been. Okay. However, we're still selling some trees. If people are going to be cutting corners on development right now, I mean, what are the things that you can do without, and what are the things you cannot do without? I mean, maybe we've touched on it a little bit, but is there one thing that stands out to you with, hey, please don't cut back on whatever it may be, or is there anything you have in regards to that?
I think land prep is probably the most important part of the whole operation. I don't think that's an area you want to cut back.
Right.
The thing I'd love to see, number one, would be ripping, right? Yeah. Really a good ripping job. Prep your land, do whatever you're going to do, get your amendments out if you're going to do that. But most importantly, put your irrigation system in, do all that. And if you have to fumigate, especially coming out of trees, go ahead and do that, because that's a must. And I know the cost is high, but you're also going to live with that orchard for 25 years. So yes, it's going to cost you $1,100, $1,200 an acre. And I personally like the, fumigate solid, but I think you'll get that money back. And I've been in this business long enough to see peaches, for example, where they fumigated versus non-fumigation. And by the third crop, he had such much better crop on the peaches that he had already recovered his cost.
You see it already now with almonds, right? I mean, you can tell, hey, that guy fumigated, that guy didn't fumigate. Right. And just the size of the tree, right?
And in today's world, we don't want to spend the money. We want to cut costs. And I think in those areas, you got to be very careful. And that's one of the biggest mistakes I see, is that we don't want to fumigate, which, okay, fine. They say no nematode and all that. And then we try to overcompensate by putting all these amendments on the ground to compensate for not fumigation. And then now we have a problem where we're burning the trees. And now what? You're actually going backwards in a way. So be careful. Even if you're not going to fumigate and you choose not to, go ahead and put on your amendments, but please incorporate it into the ground where when you pick up that berm, you don't see it where the root zone is going to be. Big problem. So be careful with that, and everything will be fine.
Loud and clear.
Yes, sir.
Great. All right. Well, thank you very much, Conrad. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Mike, and have a great day.